All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I said good afternoon, everyone. All right. My name is Daniel Pontoh, and I want to welcome you all to my lovely city of Dover. And this wouldn't be Labor Day weekend if I didn't acknowledge that in these mills that you see around you, 200 years ago, 50 women ages 12 to 25 went on what is known as the first women's labor strike in our country. So give it up for the labor movement. I've organized on issues in New Hampshire like climate justice, immigrant justice, LGBTQ equality, affordable housing, and racial justice. And I am so proud right now to be here with you all in the political revolution that's going to defeat Donald Trump and transform America for all of us, not just the 1%. Just 4 years ago, before the last New Hampshire presidential primary in 2015, I was not someone who considered myself politically active. As someone who grew up in a working class Indonesian immigrant community of color, politics have always directly impacted the people that I care about. But never has my community felt like we had the power to do something about it. And it was Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign in 2016 that empowered me to know that when we all rise up, we the people do have the power. In the early 2000s, when ICE conducted a raid in our neighborhood in Somersworth, I remember feeling the anxiety and the fear from my mom telling me not to open the doors for anyone, to stay away from the windows. And I remember the sadness and the frustration that me and my friends felt when we learned the next day that one of our good friends, just a child in middle school, had been picked up in that raid and would be deported by ICE in the days to come. And that is why we need to end the ICE raids, close the concentration camps, and create a humane immigration system with achievable path to citizenship. And growing up, I remember how lack of health insurance impacted my family. I remember the splintering pain of a root canal that I had to endure for weeks in high school because we couldn't afford to pay out of pocket for treatment. Pain that made it nearly impossible for me to pay attention in class or to spend time with my friends. And that is why we need Bernie's Medicare for All plan that, by the way, includes dental and vision. And it feels like every year that goes by, I learn of a friend from grade school or otherwise who we lose to the opioid epidemic. Someone who's going to leave behind kids, a spouse, co-workers, friends, classmates, family. How many of you know someone who's impacted by the opioid crisis? Raise your hand. Too many of us. I stand in solidarity with you all. And that is why we as a country need to stop demonizing, stop criminalizing people who need help and treatment, and we need to fully fund rehabilitation and recovery programs in our community. And lastly, I am so tired of seeing members in my community be priced out of places they've lived, places where we've invested our time and our dollars into helping make it a desirable place to live in the first place, only to be pushed out by greedy developers and gentrification. And that is why we need to invest in affordable housing, raise the minimum wage, and tax the wealthy their fair share. 4 years ago, it was Senator Bernie Sanders who first inspired me, a young working-class immigrant of color who had been disenfranchised by the politics of the establishment elites, to get involved in the fight for our futures. And I believe that we will win. Dover, will you join me in the fight for our future? Will you join me in the fight for immigrant justice? Will you join me to end mass incarceration? Will you join me for LGBTQ equality? And will you join me to end income inequality? Who is ready to defeat Donald Trump and transform America? This rally, this community cannot just be a moment. The problems of our time require a long-term movement. And if you want to get started in this fight, can you raise your hand? Keep your hands raised. Keep your hands raised if you're going to knock doors with us in Dover, Rochester, and Somersworth. Yeah, all right. Keep your hands raised if you're going to make calls to your neighbors to talk about why we need to elect Bernie Sanders. All right, give it up for everyone who's going to be involved in the political revolution. This is the work that we need to do to pull us through to victory. So thank you all for being here. And I'd like to introduce Ben and Jerry.
Hello, I'm the Jerry. There's the Ben. Thank you guys so much for being here. It's great for me to go first. This is the first time in over 40 years of our partnership that Jerry comes before Ben, and I think that's the way it should be. I have to give my standard disclaimer. Ben & Jerry's as a company does not support political candidates or political parties. However, Ben and Jerry do individually, and we are here supporting Bernie with ice cream. So, Ben and I have never campaigned for a presidential candidate before. And that's because there's never been anyone like Bernie before. He is completely unique. We have been constituents of Bernie's for over 35 years in Vermont. We've seen the way he operates. He has never wavered. He has never backed down from fighting for the rights of average, everyday working people, and continues to do that. He understands that we need a government and a country that works for all of us, and not just the special interests, the ultra-wealthy, the giant corporations. Bernie is not for sale. His campaign is powered by all of us with small contributions, and that is the way we're going to change our country. Ben and I could not be more thrilled to be here. We are all in for Bernie. Thank you guys so much.
You know, before Bernie, Jerry and I used to be the most famous guys from Vermont. So we are so happy and honored to pass that mantle on to Bernie because, you know, ice cream is good, but a president of the United States who truly believes in justice in all its flavors, that is euphoric! You know, I gotta tell you that, you know, scooping ice cream for you guys, for me and Jerry, is the highest form of our ice cream art. I am so happy that the ice cream that we created is being used to nourish Bernie supporters. So I just want to give you a little rundown of some things that Bernie did, how I saw him as a constituent when he was in Burlington. You know, first he was elected mayor by 10 votes, and he defeated a long-term incumbent Democratic machine mayor who was in bed with the business community, and at the end of that guy's reign, he had essentially made plans to sell the waterfront of Burlington to developers who would then privatize the lakefront with high-rise, high-end condominiums. And Bernie came into office and he said, you know, there's such a thing as the right to public access. And he fought those developers all the way through all the courts in Vermont, and he won. And today, we have the most beautiful public park with a boathouse open to everybody in the city of Durham. And then he became my congressman, and one of his first acts back then was to take a busload of women with breast cancer over the border into Canada so that they could buy the prescription medicines they needed at 1/10 the price. And then he became my senator. And as senator, just recently, he introduced the Stop Bezos Act, which was stop business executives by zeroing out subsidies. And what it was about was that large corporations were paying such poor wages to their workers that those workers had to go on Medicaid and other aid programs just to get by. So the Bernie's legislation said that those corporations need to reimburse the government for those costs. And just a month after introducing it, Jeff Bezos, head of Amazon, raised his minimum wage to $15 an hour. And it was Bernie who brought Republicans and Democrats together to pass a resolution in Congress to get the U.S. out of the war in Yemen. You know, I know when it comes down to it, the most important thing for every Democrat, many independents, and certainly Bernie himself, is to defeat Trump. And the reality is that in poll after poll after poll, when they do these head-to-head matchups of what would happen if it was Bernie running against Trump, Bernie beats Trump. Yes. Bernie beats Trump. 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 Yes. Let everybody know. And now I want to make a promise that when we all elect Bernie and Jerry and I become the ministers of ice cream, we promise a pint in every freezer, a sundae in every bowl. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor. It is my honor to tell you about what a good time I've been having here with you today. And Jerry also wants to tell you about what a good time he's been having here today.
Let me thank the Kenny Brothers Band for their music. Let me thank Daniel Pontoh for his remarks. And let me thank my friends of many years, Ben & Jerry's. You know, we've all gotten fat eating Ben & Jerry's ice cream, right? But I want to tell you a little bit about Ben & Jerry's, and that is not just that they produce the best ice cream in the country, not just that we are going to make them a new cabinet position. Who needs a Secretary of Defense when you can have a secretary of ice cream, right? And Ben talked about a pint in every freezer. You were too modest. We're talking about world peace. We're talking a pint in every freezer around the world, right? Jobs in America, peace around the world. All right. Let me thank you all for coming out. This is a lovely turnout. And on this Labor Day, I just want to touch on some of the issues that are impacting the working families of this country. And I want to tell you a little bit about what this campaign is about. Now, it goes without saying that I'm here this evening to ask for your support to help me win the New Hampshire Democratic primary, and with your help, we're going to do just that. And with your help and the help of people all over this country, we are going to win the Democratic nomination. And once we do that, with your help, we are going to defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. But this evening, I'm here to ask for more than that. I would not be running for president if it was only a question of defeating Donald Trump. We've got to do more than that. And what we have got to do is to transform this country and create a government and an economy that works for all of us and not just the 1%. As many of you know, the message of our campaign is us, not me. And if you think about it, that message is fairly profound because it says two things. It says that our vision of what human life is about is not the same vision that Donald Trump and his friends have. Their vision is you lie, you cheat, you steal, you step on everybody you can, and you make a whole lot of money. That's their vision. Our vision is a very different vision. Our vision is based in the belief that we are all in this together, that my family has to worry about your family, that your family worries about my family, that we make sure that nobody is left behind, nobody slips through the cracks, that we are in this together. And the second part of that message is equally profound, and I will tell you what no other candidate for president will tell you. And that is that no president of the United States, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, can do it alone. All right, I could give you a speech telling you all the wonderful things that I want to do, and you'll nod your head and you'll say, that's great. But it cannot be done unless millions of people stand up and are prepared to take on the greed and corruption of the corporate elite and their politicians in Washington. You know, and what that means is to ask ourselves questions that are not asked in Congress, not asked in the media. And how does it happen? Why does it happen that after all of the speeches, great speeches, all of the party platforms, all of the legislation, how does it happen that the average American worker today, despite 45 years of increased productivity and exploding technology, how does it happen that average worker today is not earning in real inflation accounted for dollars 1 nickel more than he or she earned 45 years ago. All right, you got that? How does it happen that over the last 30 years, the wealthiest 1% has seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth, while the bottom half of American society has actually seen a decline in their wealth? How does it happen today that in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, which is where you're living right now, we have more income and wealth inequality today than at any time since the 1920s, with 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society? How does it happen that in America today, half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck? Do you know what that's about? All right, you do know what it's about. And my brother, who is somewhere around here, and I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. And what that means when you live paycheck to paycheck is if your car breaks down and you don't have the $500 to get it fixed, you can't get to work. And if you can't get to work, you don't get a paycheck. If you don't get a paycheck, you can't feed your kids, and you may get thrown out of your apartment. What it means when you live paycheck to paycheck, which half of the American people are doing right now, it means that if you get sick, you may not be able to go to the doctor. And if there's a serious illness in the family, you are scared to death about what that will do to your credit rating. That's what living paycheck to paycheck is about. So what this campaign is about is not only winning the nomination, not only defeating Trump, but finally having the courage to tell the people on top, and I'm talking about Wall Street, made $100 billion in profit last year, and they're charging you 20, 30% interest rates on your credit card. The pharmaceutical industry made over $69 billion in profit last year, and you can't afford the prescription drugs that your doctors prescribe. And I'm talking about the insurance companies who rip us off every single day, and they will spend hundreds of millions of dollars to try to stop us from moving to Medicare for all. I'm talking about the fossil fuel industry, which receives hundreds of billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies and in tax breaks while they produce a product which is destroying our planet. So what this campaign is about, it's not just another election where we got to win. This is an election where you and you and you and you and me have got to stand together and tell this corrupt, greedy corporate elite that this country belongs to all of us, not just the 1%. And the first thing that we are going to tell them is that Trump and his friends may have given them over $1 trillion in tax breaks, but they better spend that money quick, because we're going to rescind those tax breaks as soon as we get into office. It is not acceptable to me or the American people that we have a corrupt tax system which allows companies like Amazon that made over $10 billion in profits, and many, many other companies, profitable companies, to not pay 1 nickel in federal income tax. We are going to end that. It is not acceptable to me that in New Hampshire and in Vermont and all over this country, you got people working for $8, $9, $10 an hour, and nobody can make it on those low wages. 4 years ago, I came here to New Hampshire, and I said what the political establishment and the media establishment said was a very radical idea. What I said is that if you work 40 hours a week in the United States, you should not be living in poverty. We've got to have a minimum wage, which is a living wage, $15 an hour. And 4 years ago, the establishment said, radical idea, it's not going to happen. Well, I'll tell you what's happening. In the last 4 years, 7 states in this country have passed legislation to raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour. And several months ago, the United States House of Representatives voted to raise the federal minimum wage $15 an hour. And together we're going to make Mitch McConnell bring up my legislation in the Senate, $15 an hour. And when we pass a $15 an hour minimum wage in the Senate and the House, we'll see what the fraud in the White House does, whether he signs that bill or whether he vetoes it. But it's not just raising wages, it's making sure that women receive equal pay for equal work. It's making sure that millions of workers who today want to join unions are able to do so, because we're going to pass legislation making it harder for corporations and employers to stop workers from joining unions. But it's not just wages. What it is also is understanding that in this moment in American history, if our younger people are going to make it into the middle class, they need, regardless of their income, the ability to get a higher education, either in college or in a trade school. Because those are where the good jobs are. And I am tired of hearing from young people all across this country who say, you know, you tell me how good it is, how important it is for us to get a college education, but you're not telling me about the $50,000 in debt that I'll incur when I get out of school. So today we're saying 2 things. Number 1, we are going to make public colleges and universities tuition free. And we are going to cancel all student debt in this country. Now my critics say, well, you know, Bernie, that's a fine idea. How are you going to pay for it? And let me tell you exactly how we will pay for it. All of you remember that 11 years ago, against my vote, the Congress bailed out the crooks on Wall Street who destroyed our economy. Remember that? Well, if we could bail out the crooks on Wall Street for trillions of dollars, we certainly can cancel all student debt in this country. Now I want to touch on an issue where we have been winning a whole lot of support and changing the entire discussion. 4 years ago, when I came here to New Hampshire, by the way, before I go any further, thank you, New Hampshire, for the great support you gave us. And what you did in that election above and beyond voting for me, what you showed the country is that the ideas that we are talking about, which the establishment said were too far-reaching, too radical, you said that that is exactly what this country needs. Thank you, New Hampshire. And 4 years ago, when I came here, we talked about what the establishment said was a very radical idea that the American people would not respond positively to. And that was that health care is a human right, not a privilege. And that was that it is absurd that the United States of America, our great country, is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. So I'm happy to tell you that over the last 4 years, what we have seen is more and more support for a Medicare for all single-payer system, and that is exactly what we are going to pass in our administration. And the reason that we are gaining support is that every single day, people through their own life experience are seeing how dysfunctional, how barbaric the current system is. And I want everybody to know, because you don't see this much on TV and you don't hear it discussed in the Congress. We spend as a nation twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other industrialized country. Twice as much. We're spending close to $11,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. And after spending all of that money, what we have are 87 million Americans uninsured or underinsured. And I want to underline the word underinsured. Because a lot of politicians, they say, well, you got insurance, we're going to insure you. What they forget to say is that your insurance policy will cost you 10, 15, 20% of your income. What they will forget to tell you is there'll be a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 deductible. What they forget to tell you is the cost of the prescription drugs you need will be unaffordable for you. That's the system we have. And the system that we have now is so crazy. I just read something in the paper today. And you can multiply this story 1,000 times over. All of you read about another horrible tragedy, gun mass shooting, this time in Odessa, Texas. And there was a piece in the paper, and I'll talk about gun safety in a minute, but there was a piece in the paper. One of the police officers who responded to the shooting put his life on the line to protect his fellow Americans. He was wounded. His family now had to put up on a website a GoFundMe to pay for his medical bills. This is a police officer shot in the line of duty protecting his fellow citizens, and his family had to do a GoFundMe. This is what is happening all over this country. We lose 30,000 people a year unnecessarily. You know why? Because they get sick and they don't go to the doctor when they should, because either they have no health insurance or they have a large deductible. And if you want to talk about more insanity within this current system, understand that 500,000 Americans every single year go bankrupt because they can't pay their medical bills. Now, if, God forbid, somebody is diagnosed with cancer, or you have a serious heart problem, or somebody in the family has Alzheimer's or some other terrible illness, we all know what a struggle it is for that individual to try to get back on his or her feet. How do you get the doctor you need? What kind of treatment do I get? What hospital do I go to? How long am I going to be in the hospital? How long am I not going to be working and feeding my family? Those are a lot of responsibilities. But to say that if you are diagnosed with cancer or another serious illness, you will go bankrupt because of that medical bill is not what should be happening in a democratic, civilized society, and we will put an end to that barbarity. Now, in the midst of all of that, 87 million people uninsured, underinsured, 30,000 dying, 500,000 people going bankrupt. In the midst of all of that, the healthcare industry last year made over $100 billion in profit. So we are here to say as loudly and clearly as we can, the function of a rational healthcare system. This is not pie in the sky. This is not an idea that came out of my head. This is what goes on in virtually every other major country on earth. If you go to Canada and you have a heart transplant, do you know how much it costs when you get out of the hospital? Zero. You know how much it costs when you go into a doctor? Zero. You don't take out your wallet. And what they do in Canada and they do all over the world, they pay for health care out of their tax base in a progressive way, which is what we have got to do. So our message, and by the way, when we do that in this country, the overwhelming majority of the American people, everybody except maybe the very, very wealthy, will be paying less for the health care that they need, the comprehensive health care that they need, than they are currently paying. Because you're not going to have to pay any more premiums. How much are people paying in premiums a month? Who wants to tell me? What are you paying? How much? What are you paying? $300 a month? What kind of deductible do you have? $3,000. All right. So that's $3,600 plus $3,000. That's $6,600 before you even get to have your insurance kick in. Anybody else wanna? What are you paying? Anybody? What kind of deductibles do people have? $1,800 a month. $1,800 a month in premiums, $4,000 or $5,000 deductible. How big is your family? 4 people. That's what I'm talking about. You are paying for health care. All right? All right. And by the way, the business is with you. You know, if you have employer-sponsored health care, your employer is paying an arm and a leg. So we are going to put an end to that. The insurance companies somehow think that premiums are great, taxes are terrible. All right, we're going to put an end to that, and for the overwhelming majority of the American people, we're going to be funding health care through our tax base in a progressive way. What does it mean? It means no more premiums, no more deductibles, no more co-payments. Not a radical idea. It's exactly what exists in Canada and in other countries. It means that nobody in America under my legislation, and I have the lead legislation in the Senate, nobody, and I wrote that damn bill, don't forget about it. Nobody in America pays more than $200 a year for prescription drugs because we are going to stop the pharmaceutical industry, which is such a greedy and corrupt entity, you cannot believe it, all right? Some of you may know that I was up in Canada about a month ago, and I went with a group of folks from the Midwest, from Detroit to Windsor, Ontario, and these were people who are diabetics, and diabetes is a very, very serious and growing problem in this country. We went to Ontario to buy insulin, which is obviously what diabetics need. Anybody know the price differential between Canada and the United States? What's the difference in price for insulin? It's 1/10 the price. Can you believe that? This is the same exact product, not a different product, same company, same bottle. I think they changed the label. Same exact product for 10% of the price. And the reason is that here in the United States, the drug companies can charge us any price they want. They want to double it, the market allows them to do that, they will. There's an enormous amount of price fixing that goes on. In terms of insulin, you got 3 companies producing 90% of the insulin in this country, and just coincidentally, their prices go up simultaneously. So what we are going to do is take on the drug companies, and we'll be able to make sure that nobody in the country has to pay more than $200 for the medicine that they need. The way we do it, I've been attacked by Democrats and Republicans. Bernie wants to disrupt the healthcare system. Quite the contrary. All that we are doing, 2 things. We are going to expand. Medicare right now is the most popular healthcare program in America. But it's not perfect. We're going to expand it to include dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses. And then, in the first year, right now, to be eligible for Medicare, you got to be 65. What we do is, over a 4-year period, we go from 65 down to 55 in year 1, down to 45 in year 2, down to 35 in year 3, and we cover every man, woman, and child in the country in the 4th year. That's it. Ain't more radical than that. So if you're looking at a simple way to provide health care for all, that is the way to do it. Free choice with regard to any doctor you want to go to, any hospital you want to go to, as is the case in Canada, that's your choice. So we are gaining on this issue. Our opposition obviously will come from the drug companies and the pharmaceutical industries. Now I don't know, are they already running ads here in New Hampshire? They are? Okay, well they're going to spend a fortune. And understand when you see these ads that will tell you how terrible Medicare for All is, understand who is paying for those ads. That is the drug companies and the insurance companies who made $100 billion in profits. And they could care less whether you could afford health care or not. All that's important to them is they continue to make these huge profits. Well, we got bad news for them. Whether they like it or not, with all of their money, we will pass a Medicare for All single-payer program. Now, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who has told us repeatedly that he really knows a lot about the environment, and is actually, if you ask him, he will tell you a genius. But nonetheless, he has told us that climate change is a hoax. Well, I am here to tell you that Donald Trump is a hoax. And I'm here to tell you that the scientific community is 100%, virtually unanimously, telling us climate change is real, climate change is caused by human activity, climate change is already doing devastating harm to this country and countries all over the world. And what is even more frightening than the reality of today is that what the scientists are telling us, if we do not get our act together in a bold and aggressive way, we will be suffering irreparable harm in less than a dozen years from now. Irreparable, cannot be fixed. I am proud to tell you that I have introduced the most comprehensive climate change legislation ever offered in the United States of America. And this is legislation that will transform our energy system boldly away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy, and will allow us to lead the world, because this is not an American issue, it's a global issue. Allow us to lead the world in transforming our planet's energy system. And I would say to you all, brothers and sisters, that on this issue, this is a moral imperative. If we love our children and our grandchildren, we have a moral responsibility to make sure that the planet we leave to them is a planet that is healthy and is habitable. And as President of the United States, I will do everything I can with you to make sure that that planet is one that will be good for our children. Let me just say another word on an issue that again, is on all of our minds, because we read in the papers and see on TV what's happened now in Texas. And it goes on and on and on, and it's an issue, to be honest with you, I don't like to talk about it, because the images that it conjures up are so ugly, are so horrific. I don't like to talk about it, especially when children are around. Because we have a situation right now where kids all over this country are scared. They're scared, traumatized about going into schools, for example. Schools used to be a safe place, a place where kids, learned, where they socialized, where they had a good time or they didn't have a good time, but they felt safe. And the idea that kids today are taking drills, teachers are instructing them what to do if something terrible happens, is just frightening. It's just horrible. So all I can tell you is that we have over 300 million guns in this country today that are out on the streets. We have over 10 million assault weapons that are out on the streets. And anybody who tells you that they have a magical solution to this crisis is not telling you the truth. But on the other hand, we have an obligation to do everything possible, everything we possibly can, to make sure that our children and our communities are safe. And on this issue, here is the truth. Whether people live in rural communities like Vermont and New Hampshire, whether they are gun owners or non-gun owners, whether they live in New York City or Los Angeles, the truth is the American people, by and large, agree about what we should do. Overwhelming support for expanding background checks to make certain that if somebody has a past which tells you that they should not own a gun, we will make sure they don't own a weapon. They don't own a gun. Overwhelming support to do away with the gun show loophole, which now allows people to avoid a background check and buy a weapon. Overwhelming support to end the so-called straw man provision, which allows people to go into a gun store and legally buy guns and then sell those guns to criminal elements. And there is growing support, now majority support, for a position I have held for decades, that when we all know that the function of an assault weapon, a military-style weapon, is to kill people as quickly as they can, that we should ban the sale and distribution of assault weapons in this country. And more Americans, now a majority, believe in that. And there are other things that we should be doing. So you may ask yourself a simple question. If the American people overwhelmingly believe in what we call common sense gun safety legislation, everything I've told you, and other provisions, why isn't it passed? And the answer is you got a president and you got Republican leadership who are scared to death of the NRA. And I am here to tell you that this president will not be intimidated by the NRA. One other issue out there that I want to mention, a lot of issues, but I just want to mention one more. You know, we hear many of our conservative politicians go forward and they say, you know what, we hate big government, get the government off the backs of the American people, deregulate this, deregulate that. We hate government, except when it comes to telling a woman what she can do with her own body. So I am here to tell you, that I believe that a woman's right to control her own body is a constitutional right. That decision is for the women, not for politicians at the local, state, or federal level. So I just want to thank you all so much for coming out this evening and to tell you what you already know, that we are living in an incredibly dangerous and unprecedented moment in American history. The challenges out there are enormous. But this is what I sincerely believe. If we stand up to Trump and his friends who want to divide us up, their political strategy is not complicated. What they want to do is divide the American people up by the color of our skin, or where we were born, or our religion, or our sexual orientation. They wanted to slice and dice us up and get us to turn against each other. Our view is totally opposite. Our view is that we bring the American people together. Black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, gay and straight, immigrant, native born. That we bring our people together around an agenda that speaks to all working people in this country. Now, at the end of the day, let me tell you, because I deal with this stuff every day. I'm a United States Senator and I deal with this. The 1% is unbelievably powerful. They have unlimited amounts of money. They have huge influence over what you see and hear in the media. They control through their campaign contributions what goes on politically in America. So I don't want to minimize for a second the power of the corporate elite and the 1%. But at the end of the day, 1% is 1%. And the last that I heard is that 99% is a heck of a lot larger number than 1%. So today I am here in Dover to ask, obviously, for your support in the primary, but I'm here to ask for more than that. I'm asking you to join me to help make a political revolution which tells the corporate elite and their paid political supporters that enough is enough, that this country belongs to all of us, not just the few. Thank you all very much.